privilege to hold the position of Director of Development at the Robert H. Jackson Center. And on behalf of our president, Kristen McMahon, thank you for being here tonight. So, we are hosting the Turner Winter Series conversation, which has been titled tonight, Greg Peterson Unplugged. And I'd like to remind those in the audience, if you have your cell phones on, please turn them off or silence them. We'd appreciate that. So not to overlook Greg's extensive experience as a lawyer and community leader, but I think it would be fair to say that when people think of Greg, there are three concepts top of mind: interviewer, storyteller, and sports fanatic. This evening, the focus and the microphone are turning onto Greg so he can highlight the sports fans and storyteller that he is. But that is getting ahead of the story, so I shouldn't do that. First, you should receive an update on the Jamestown Tarpskunks, our community-owned and operated baseball team, and their 2025 season. To that end, I'd like to welcome Christian Dulce to the podium. Christian is the general manager and director of sales for the Jamestown Tarpskunks, and he asked me to say this, the best neighbor in Jamestown, New York. So the Tarpskunks, they're members of the Perfect Game Collegiate Baseball League, and Dulce is a Jamestown native. He's a 2022 graduate of John Carroll University, where he earned his Bachelor of Arts and Science in Sports Studies and Athletic Administration, while minoring in business. So Christian, number 11, I believe, the podium is yours. Come on up.
Hi everyone, I appreciate all of you taking the time out of your schedules to come here tonight for a night filled with great baseball stories. But before we dive into those baseball stories, I want to highlight the future, which is our exciting 2025 Tarpskunks baseball season. We had an immense amount of success last year, and we had all-time highs in attendance, ticket sales, community involvement, and we're looking to build on that great progress we had in 2024 into this upcoming season, which is our 5th anniversary. If you can believe it, we're just 36 days away from our opening day on May 29th when we play our rival Batavia Muck Dogs. We're extremely excited for our season to begin and have loaded our schedule with some really great promotions that I think every single fan is going to love. On our May 29th home opener, we will have a pregame tailgate festival presented by 3C's Catering and Jamestown Awning. It's going to feature the band Porcelain Bus Drivers. It's going to have a food truck, a bounce house, and in addition, the first 200 fans will receive a 5th anniversary commemorative t-shirt to kick off the season with a bang. Shortly after, our season will continue as we host our annual Kids Day at the stadium for a special 11 a.m. start presented by Chautauqua Region Community Foundation. We have 2,200 students and staff attending our game this year from Jamestown Public Schools, Sherman, Cassadaga, Westfield, Panama, and Falconer, all for free. So we want to thank the Community Foundation for their support and for their great support in this community to allow these kids to go to this event for free. We also will be continuing another Jamestown baseball staple with fireworks nights in 2025 with 2 of them, the first one on Thursday, July 3rd, and the second on Friday, July 25th. And we want to make sure we kick off 4th of July weekend with a bang, no pun intended there. And we also want to end this season on a really high note. So we thank Jamestown Mattress and Collaborative Children's Solutions for those firework nights. We also have a really great opportunity for fans in this community with 5 community buyouts this year. Greater Chautauqua Federal Credit Union, Jamestown Community College, Wegmans, Live CHQ, and Collaborative Children's Solutions are all going to be sponsoring a community buyout game this year. Our Live CHQ Community Buyout Night is a first responders night, so we look to honor those first responders and healthcare workers in the area. All our community buyout games, again, are free to the public and are great ways for the organizations to show their support. So we want to thank them, and we encourage every single fan to come out to those games. A few other cool promotions taking place this season that I wanted to highlight is we have a Kids Carnival Day with bounce houses and games on Friday, July 13th. We're going to be doing a Tarpskunks Kids Camp. We're going to be doing a youth baseball and softball night where all youth baseball players and softball players will enter for free. We'll be doing Bark at the Park, $2 nights, strikeout cancer jersey raffle. So we're super excited for these events, and we know that the fans hopefully will enjoy them, and we encourage you all to take part in whatever event kind of suits your best interest. Our main goal this year, our main goal over the past few years, is to continue to get kids to the park. And now, thanks to our Wi-Fi fund, we allow access to all kids in the area for free tickets, and we hope this is something that children in our community take advantage of. So all children can enter the ballpark with their baseball jersey on for free this upcoming year. As we get closer to the season, you're going to hear a lot about our different events being promoted to you like tonight, and you'll probably see where it's presented by or sponsored by, and that just goes to show the number of local businesses and organizations that have our back and have support for our organization. So without them, this would not all be possible. So I want to say thank you to all our sponsors and supporters this season. As I wrap up here, I want to remind you that there's just 36 more days till our season begins. We look to have a really exciting season and a fantastic team out there on the field. So there's no better time to get your season tickets, your merchandise, and start planning your trips down to the ballpark. I think there's something at the ballpark that is meant for all of you this upcoming season, and we look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
How about another round of applause for Christian? I want to say hello. This is being live streamed. I know Russ Dietrich and his lovely bride are watching, so we'd like to say hello. But I was involved with the Buffalo Bisons for a long time, and I've told Greg from day one I was extremely impressed with Christian, and for him to still be here and doing what he's doing is a great credit to him and to the great board that you have here running this team. Unequivocally, I cannot see another team in that league that has worked so hard in the off season as this young man and the team of volunteer or interns that he brings along. It's really a pleasure to see. So in 36 more days, I will be here. The other great reason for the success of that team and the Jammers before that is you have a very strong daily newspaper here. And Scott, I want to thank you very much for all that you do for coverage of not only the Tarp Skunks, but amateur baseball and amateur sports and high school sports in this community. I read the paper, and coming as a journalist, it's always great to see. Back when we opened Pilot Field in 1988, we're trying to bring a major league team to Buffalo, so we were doing everything we could to bring national attention to the city and to the ballpark and to our ball club. And one of the ways we did is we were able to go to Washington, D.C. to see the Cracker Jack Old Timers game that was on ESPN and was held at Robert Kennedy Stadium for many, many years. And the Riches were able to convince them to bring the game to Buffalo. So we have this big announcement and announcing the games coming in the summer. I get back to my desk and the phone's ringing, and it's Bill Giesel, our in-house attorney, used to work at Phillips Lytle, and he said, I'd like you to put down on the list a Greg Peterson for an all-access media pass. And I said, okay, great. What media outlet is he with? He just said, just put down Jamestown. I said, oh, the Post-Journal or the, he said, it doesn't matter, just put Jamestown. And he raised his voice, so I realized I don't say another word. So okay, we put it down. So now comes the game, and I'm on the field, and there's Greg Peterson with his, lanyard around and his camera. And as his wife, Cindy, told me later, he felt when he walked out there as a member of the media and all these old-timers, Hall of Famers, Greg was like a kid in the candy store, except he didn't know which aisle to go down. Well, I told her he went down every aisle and took every piece of candy off the shelf because he interviewed everyone. It wasn't just an interview. I mean, he'd sit them down like you're going to see tonight and really got in-depth stories. Well, all of those interviews and many other are part of over 3,000 interviews that he has and works out of his attic in his home. So when you're driving down the street, early in the morning and you see that attic light on, it wasn't Emerson leaving the light on. It's him up there maneuvering and editing and adding music to these great stories. So over the years, I told him, I said, Greg, you can't just throw them out on YouTube and have people, I said, there's some great pieces there. You should do something here at your favorite center, the Jackson Center here in Jamestown, and do it as a night. Well, happy to say that he has done that, and he's done it twice, and each one always has a special angle to it. And tonight, Uunplugged 3, and it has a great angle. And this is a former Rich baseball operations associate. Greg Sisson worked for us, well, I wasn't there, but he worked for Rich baseball operations with the Jamestown Jammers from 2002 to, I believe, 2008. And he was so good here, they transported him to Arkansas to work for the Naturals that were another team in our organization. And then he came back here and got a real job, coaching and doing such a great job at JCC that they promoted him to, the head of athletics and everything that deals with sports at the community college. And I know the community college has a great relationship, with the ball club that just makes this, synergy even more. So we're going to hear from some great tales out of Greg, but without any further ado, the host of Uunplugged number 3, Greg Peterson.
If turnabout's fair play, some night I'll do Uunplugged 4, and it'll be just nothing but Bolani stories. One specifically, and I've said it once before, so we're down in Washington. He's doing some lobbying, and I'm his bag man, literally. I am carrying a bag, and the bag is loaded with uniforms with all of these senators like Schumer and Gillibrand, and it's just on the back of the Bison's jersey. So we're literally going from place to place to place, Amo Houghton, you name it. And we are then going to meet with them. And one of the senators at the time was Alphonse D'Amato. And Senator D'Amato, we went to his office. Everybody in the New York Penn League at the time was there. I mean, all the you can't do that now. You can't even get in the building, let alone what we did. But we got off the train, walked into the building, went to D'Amato's office, and D'Amato was supposed to meet us. Well, it turned out an aide came out. And that wasn't going to work for Mike. I mean, here's a guy that says, here, I'm here on behalf of Senator D'Amato. Thank you very much. Bring all of your people in. There had to be 20-some people, including the president of the league, Bob Julian. And we're going to meet with this aide. That was inappropriate. So Mike, the magic of it all, gets on his cell phone, calls somebody who I don't know. And next thing you know, interesting enough, out pops Senator Alphonse D'Amato live to meet us. And I asked Mike, I go, what did you do to actually extract the senator from wherever he was? And he goes, well, I happened to call his largest fundraiser in New York State, a guy from Buffalo, and sure enough, I got to him, he got to D'Amato. Guess what? He showed up. So that's Mike Bolani at his best. So, this is a little bit different, and tonight, a few things which I think you'll find a little self-effacing for me, all with a light touch to it. And the first one I thought I'd do, because it really is me at my worst. And you'll see this, but we lost a real legend in the form of Phil Donahue this past year. And Phil Donahue came here several times. And that's for those a little bit, my age and older. He was a rock star in the early days of television, interviewed virtually everybody. But he happened to be the guy who interviewed Albert Speer, a Nuremberg defendant. And so he came here, and I did an interview. Subsequently, he came and gave a speech. The place is packed, and I was the guy who was responsible for introducing him. You'll see what happens next. How does this come together? And this is an interesting story because Phil Donahue has always been a fan of mine, has obviously given the crowd a lot of people. Yeah, what does he fit?
You said I've always been a fan of yours.
Oh, have you? Have you been a fan of mine? I hope he says that. And Ed, you got this on film? You got it. Perfect. I'm going to play this on YouTube. Absolutely.
So let's celebrate this for our kids. Let's make sure they know about it. Let's support Greg. And he knows I'm a big fan of his.
Wow. My new best friend, Phil Donahue. The postscript to the whole thing. Place is packed. I say what I said. You heard that. You couldn't hear because I couldn't turn the volume high enough. But there was a young lady in the audience who happens to be my wife, who's sitting exactly where she is currently sitting, and she yells out, "You got it wrong!" in front of everybody, doing great things to make sure that I am grossly embarrassed. Along those lines, and we had the privilege of having an Academy Award-winning screenwriter named Bud Schulberg here. Huge event. Bud Schulberg, aside from everything else, Hollywood royalty, but he became a member of the Boxing Hall of Fame. I listened to it on radio saying that he was being inducted. I couldn't believe he was alive. I found out where he was living. I tracked him down and actually went to his house, which then led to him coming here. Why did he come here? Because he was one of the guys at the Nuremberg trial. Bud Schulberg showed the film. So for those who watched the Nuremberg trials, you see that at one point Robert Jackson's team shows film of the concentration camps. It's really a dramatic, a dynamic moment of the trial. That was Bud Schulberg, who subsequently became royalty in Hollywood. But he came here, and we came here and we were talking about the movie where he won the Academy Award as the screenwriter called On the Waterfront with Marlon Brando. And there's a very famous scene, and I'll show you what happened to me again.
I've got all the stuff to say about I could have been a contender and all this stuff I have to say. And how can I say that if Ron is holding a gun at me? I just couldn't say all that. And Kazan said, well, what if you reach out and just put the gun down and then go on? And Brando said, oh, that'll be fine. I swear to God, it was just like that. We went.
I had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody instead of a bum, which is what I am. Now that came from two sources. One from a very famous play, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that, and another from my wife. My daughter went to Kenyon College, and in 2000, they had a special event, kind of a one-off, of which former Commissioner Fay Vincent was there, and he brought Joe Black, who was a Negro League ball player in the Brooklyn Dodgers, and he brought back Slick Surratt, who played with the Negro Leagues, and Larry Doby, who also was the first American League. He was there, and so of course that's like throwing chum to me, so I went down there, and I parked myself and had a chance to interview them separately. And that was a thrill, but that was in the year 2000. But part of that, I had a chance to interview the commissioner, who just passed away this past year, about the fact that he was the commissioner at the time of the Pete Rose affair, and asking about the evidence, et cetera. So though this may not be funny, it's certainly insightful, and both Fay Vincent and Pete Rose this year passed away. So it's kind of a poignant short piece, but a sense where I had a chance to actually interview him. So we'll show this Fay Vincent.
Could you personally forgive him and reinstate him?
Well, saying sorry isn't enough. He has to tell me a lot more. But assuming he comes clean and then helps to straighten out the problem with gambling in baseball, that is the perception that it's not a big deal. Yes, I think his only route back is that route. There's some reason why he can't come clean, and I don't know what it is. It may be that he's got a lot of extenuating stories that he have to tell. I think it smacks of other law enforcement problems. You know, he was really a bad guy. He did a lot of bad stuff.
Plus, he has a personality disorder.
Yeah, he really does. And, you know, I don't know if you've looked at it, but the report we put out is overwhelming. If you can go 4 pages into it without forming... John Dowd, who wrote it for me, said, you know, Fay, he said, if this were a jury, we wouldn't order lunch for the jury. They'd be right back.
I appreciate that.
He said, they'll be right back. I mean, it's just, and you'd say to him, Pete, all these calls from the clubhouse every night to the bookie. And the lady who kept track, she wrote down your name. Who was calling the bookie? It's the middle of July. Well, I don't know. Well, I mean, come on. People argue with me the evidence is simply overwhelming. It's either the greatest multiple level conspiracy by people that never knew each other to frame Pete, or he did it. And it's inconceivable that he didn't do it. He did it.
There's a Jamestown connection to all of that. The time that Pete Rose the report was filed and had to leave baseball, the traveling secretary for the Cincinnati Reds, where Pete Rose was the manager, was our Jamestown native, Dan Lanetta. So maybe someday Dan will feel free to talk about it. But there was a lot going on at that time. The next one, talk about a lot going on at the time. One of the biggest events probably in Chautauqua County history was in 1992. The Democratic National Convention had occurred, and they had just nominated Bill Clinton for the presidency and Al Gore as the vice president. And you may remember that they decided then they would embark on a bus tour. And one of the first stops was, in fact, Chautauqua Institution. Now again, it's like throwing chum to a shark. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I needed to be there and videotape this. So I just assumed that I mean, Bellani's encouraged me to do all this stuff, so I assumed I had a press pass and I told everybody I did. I'm not sure anybody ever checked. So what you're going to see now is a little run-up to it. So much so that unless it's explained, you won't fully appreciate it. This was, the show was going to be from the library. If you know where the library is on Bester Plaza, it's where they were going to open up the doors, and out would come majestically the presidential candidate, the vice presidential candidate, Stan Lundeen, Senator Schumer. It was going to be a cavalcade of Democratic personalities. To lead up to that, they had the Harmony Barbershoppers. They were staged, they're off to the right, as you're looking at the front doors. And they're singing a patriotic song. And the idea was there was going to be a patriotic song, and then I'm the camera guy, of course, they're doing it for me, and I'm going to pan right in front of the doors are going to majestically open. That's the magic. Watch what happens. Watch the doors. Watch the doors. Watch the Secret Service guy. this guy. Are you kidding me? Later. And when they went out, Secret Service guys were checking everything, checking the podium, checking the mics and all that stuff, and you could see the door shut. And there was a Chautauqua institution guy, unnamed, who then at the bottom, so nobody could come in, that's for the protection, they latched and they locked on the floor, just one of those, and everybody forgot. And the guy left who did the, and the next thing you know, they ended, and so the door was to open, and then, of course, there's a guy, Secret Service guy, or somebody says, all right, your Harmony Express, one more time, rank it up. And so you can actually see in something that I cut up, there's a guy on the floor that actually remembered to put it up. So I wanted to send that at the time to Candid Camera in the worst way, and so I put it in a nice VHS, and I actually had everything set up, but I made a mistake of calling Tom Becker, my good friend, saying, Tom, what do you think? Isn't it the funniest thing? And he goes, yeah, it's really funny, but not at Chautauqua's expense, please. So that did not see. So you're seeing a world premiere tonight. Sorry, Tom. The next one is a guest who was here, and he came really at the beneficence of George Carlo, Secrets of Champions, and he was a guest instructor, worked with the high schools and stuff. And we had him at the Jamestown Jammers, and John Matlack, who was a Rookie of the Year, and if you're a Mets fan, one of the really premier pitchers of all time. And so we had him down there. We did a brief interview, and you'll see one of these funny stories.
When Yogi was the manager, Yogi walked by me and he said, I got to take a leak. Make sure the bus doesn't leave without me. And I'm thinking, that's really funny. Why would the bus leave without the manager? They would certainly wait on him, but he was walking on the bus and his pant leg is soaking wet. And Yogi, what in the heck happened to you? He said, you wouldn't believe it. He said, I was standing there doing my business, and the guy came in next to me, and he went to go to the bathroom, and he turned around and he said, aren't you Yogi Berra?
We're going to flip a little bit into the spiritual realm here now. Recently, Randy Anderson and I had the privilege of interviewing Paul Cooley. Paul Cooley, who some of you know well. Paul was inducted a few years ago into the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame. And so at age 90, maybe, Randy? Today. Oh, my gosh. Well, Paul, as you're watching this, happy birthday. But we're using you. So here's he was a referee for like 40-some years. And so here's a little story of Paul Cooley about one of his experiences. Actually, it's 20.
I told this in my induction speech in the Hall of Fame. I went to Clymer a number of times. And this dear old lady sat up there and she'd kind of wave at me every time. And we just got to be friends, without being friends. And she called me one night with her finger and she said, come here a minute, before the game. And I went over and she took my hand and patted me so sweet and nice. And she says, Mr. Cooley, I think you're a great official, but I'm going to pray real hard tonight that you do a better job than when you were here last week. Yeah, and you just wanted to hug her, it was so sweet. But, stick a knife in you and hug you at the same time.
Too funny. Well, since we've got a little prayer action there, but we all are the beneficiaries of Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame annually has an induction dinner, and the master of ceremonies for, I bet, close to 30 years has been Chip Johnson. And Chip, over the last few years that I've captured it, has always led off with the story du jour. So here's a few Chip Johnson moments. Sorry, Chip.
To loosen everything up a little bit, earlier today as I was driving around, I saw a bumper sticker that said, "I'm a veterinarian, therefore I can drive like an animal." Suddenly I realized how many proctologists are on the road. Now to break the ice a little bit. Did you hear about the 4 men who were stranded in a desert? Suddenly one of them died. The other 3 decided that the only way to survive was to eat the dead body.
This is a funeral director.
The first man said, "I support Liverpool, so I will eat his liver." The second man said, "I support Manchester, so I'll eat his chest." And the third man said, "I support Arsenal, but I'm not very hungry."
Funeral director. Funeral director. We just let him die here a little bit.
Now, before we begin, I wondered if you heard this story.
We had sign language this time.
There was a duck and a skunk and a deer who went out to dinner at a restaurant one night. When it came time to pay the bill, the skunk didn't have a cent, the deer didn't have a buck, so they put the bill on the duck's bill.
Moving away from that, in 2012, the Village of Faulkner honored its most important resident, Hugh Bedient. Hugh Bedient was the member of the 1912 Boston Red Sox, which was the World Series champion. Hugh pitched in 3 games, 2 of them against the great Christy Mathewson, and won one of the games during the series. And so on the 100th anniversary, we had an event sponsored by the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame, which we brought in Dick Berardino. Dick Berardino, long affiliated with the Boston Red Sox. Dick was the manager of the Jamestown. Were they known as the Red Sox then, Randy? But anyways, Falcons. But when they were affiliated with the Red Sox, so Dick had a connection here. And as it turns out, his daughter married Dwight Evans, longstanding Boston Red Sox star. But Dick was here, and we had him at the stadium. And Dick is a professional in many ways. So you'll see a few of his stories.
That's where right to the ball, halfway up that. See ATT?
Yeah.
Go from the top of the ATT sign to about 3/4 of the way up is where he hit a ball.
He said Jim Rice hit a ball.
Really?
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Halfway up that light tower. There's always a lot of quirks with different players, you know. And with managers, superstitions and stuff like that, etc. You know, eat the same food every day. And of course, I managed Wade Boggs, who ate chicken every day, you know. And he didn't hit 300 for me. And I told him the only reason he didn't hit 300 was because there were no chicken McNuggets at McDonald's. So you have a lot of superstitions in baseball. It's funny because one year we went to winter meetings after, you know, seasons, and all managers had to go over their players. And they had to, you know, say, well, where do you think he'll play next year and how high do you think he'll go? Well, when I, you know, talked about Boggs, I said he's a below average third baseman, below average arm, below average hitter, below average power, below average runner. And that's what he was. That's what he was. Everything was below average. I said, however, he has a great work ethic, so he will improve. I projected him AAA. That's my projection. Now he's in the Hall of Fame. So I'm a stink as an evaluator of talent. They were in Detroit. Ted went a couple years after Ted came up, and he was having a great year. And they're playing in Detroit. Fred Hutchinson managing the Detroit Tigers. and it's a tie game in the 8th inning, and Ted's already got 2 hits, including a home run, and Hank Greenberg's playing first base, all right? So, base are loaded, Ted's coming up, and Fred Hudson comes up to the top step of the dugout in the old Tiger Stadium, and he's moving the infielders in, okay? And Hank doesn't want to move into the infield grass because Ted's hitting, and Ted could hit a ball pretty hard, okay? And now Jim Bagby's kind of watching all of this, you know, and just watching. And finally, Greenberg relents, and he comes into the infield grass. And Jim Bagby comes up to the top step of the dugout, and he says, "Now the boy," says Hank, "keep coming in, keep coming in. If you want to look like me and talk like me, keep coming in." That's a true story. That's a true story. Managing the minor leagues, and you had a young kid knocked out of the box about the third inning.
that happens.
You know, and it was about 8 or 9 to 1, and popping out to the mound
You'll be
to
there
get
in
the ball
spirit.
from the kid.
Yeah.
And he says, "Pop, I'm not tired. Pop, I'm not tired." He says, "I understand." He says, "But your outfielders are. Give me the ball." I thought that was a classic line.
Randy Anderson's laugh is what made that. We were blessed because of the New York Penn League affiliation with so many teams that we had managers of the opposing teams who were often professional baseball players. And they would come to the games to manage, and I knew that in advance. I circled it when I knew they were going to be in town. And you also know the rhythm of the games, the rhythm of the game where, in fact, they did batting practice, and at some point between batting practice and when the game starts, there's like an hour lull. And if you play your cards right, I would set up in the general manager's office and hope against hope that I could convince that former major league player to come and to be interviewed. And we did many of them. Some were really fascinating. Time will not permit us to show a lot of them, but if you want to see some crazy ones, see Wally Backman sometime. This one here is a guy named Greg Hibbard. Now, Greg played with 4 teams. He was the manager of the Mahoning Valley at the time here, and he was a successful major league pitcher. But I never knew about this side of him as a really comedian and an imitator. So this is Greg Hibbard, 2011.
A funny story with Harry, though. Me and my wife at the time walked into his restaurant, and he had a big round table there in the front corner of the restaurant. And I walk in, and I think I'd pitched that night, and you know, when you have a good game, you want to go out and eat dinner or whatever. And I walked in, and Harry saw me walk in, and you know, he was, "Hey, Hibby, come on over, you know, have a seat," you know. And there was like 10 chairs at the table, you know. Well, Harry, I mean, you had to sit and talk for 2 hours before you even ordered food. So, you know, we sat there, and it's just fun listening to Harry, you know, telling stories. And one of the favorite calls that I ever heard him say was, "Hey, you know, Steve, 6 of my best friends just walked in, and they're all named Bud." But it was funny. The other thing that was awesome about Harry was once in a while the game wouldn't be on TV, and so he'd be on the radio. And I remember pitching a game, 8th inning. I leave the game. The reliever comes in, you know, and we're leading by 2 runs, and it's the bottom of the ninth or top of the ninth, and I'm sitting in the clubhouse listening over the piped in sound, right? And I mean, here you go. And the pitch. There's a drive. It might be. Sandberg makes the catch. And I'm like, what? I mean, I'm like running outside to see if it's a homer, and there's Sandberg making the catch on the infield. Yeah. And it was like every ball that the guy would hit seemed like was going to be a homer. Yeah. And then he'd be like, you know, the second baseman makes the catch. And I'm like, oh. It was nerve-wracking to listen to it on the radio.
Yeah. Oh, it might be, it could be. You know?
Yeah, it might be, it could be. Sandberg makes the catch. Oh.
This was really fun. and you should go on stage with this Harry Carey. Along those same lines, the Mahoning Valley had a manager, and they were affiliated with the Cleveland Indians at the time, Travis Fryman. Travis Fryman was I forget how many, 5 times All-Stars, Golden Glove, and as he played with the Detroit Tigers, and that's kind of a team I followed. So he was a funny guy, and he tells about one incident where he was playing with the Tigers, and the Tigers are playing the Chicago White Sox, and you'll see this Travis Fryman moment.
Well, the blooper that's shown every year, every time, is the lunacy of Steve Lyons pulling his pants down at first base when he dove head first when he played for the White Sox. It's on every blooper reel you ever see in every ballpark. Pulls his pants down to his underwear. I don't remember the details of the game, but there was a close play at first base. Steve Lyons was playing for the White Sox at the time, you know, sort of a mediocre, just a hustler type player, and dove head first into first base, which you really should never do. And I guess he's covered in dirt. He gets up and pulls his pants down to knock the dirt out in front of however many people were at the game that night, underwear and all.
There's the bunt. That could be trouble as Petrie. No, Stevie dives in and beats it. Good effort by Steve Lyons.
And that'll be a base hit right there. Good job. I'll tell you one thing, not a bad defensive play either by the Tigers.
Did you see that? He's going to get the dirt out, and all of a sudden he unbuckled his pants and they fell down.
One of life's
the face is about the same color as the bill of that cap right now.
And then acts surprised that he did it. I know Steve a little bit. I think he's goofy enough to have done it on purpose, and he's also goofy enough not to have had a clue or forgotten where he was entirely. But I remember thinking that was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life, and it's on every blooper reel I've ever seen in any ballpark ever.
Geez, I don't think that's really the proper place to do that, but
he forgot where he was. He had a vapor lock. He had a brain cramp.
Oh my.
We're bringing Paul Cooley back again, and the form of really the beginning of an introduction to our guest, the highlight of tonight, which is the reason you're here. And that's, of course, our good friend George Sisson. So Paul does a little bit of a quick vignette on our good guest.
I was 56, I think, with George Sisson. I was playing with a team with George Sisson. If you know George, he's always on somebody's back about something. And he got at me one day and he said, "You're losing it, Cooley, your speed's gone. One thing I could do was run." And I said, "George, I can still beat out a bunt." He said, "I don't believe you can." So I thought, well, I'm going to. Before the day was over, I bunted 5 times and beat all 5 of them out. And believe it or not, George shut his mouth.
I can't believe that. But
that doesn't sound possible.
I'm delighted you did.
Shut him up or
Yeah, for at least a minute. The last piece is a highlight. We have shown it once before, but it's indicative of George like no other, that he was fan-friendly. He definitely had the idea that baseball was to be enjoyed, and he was willing to go really to all ends to make that a reality. And so you'll see not only George in action, Matt Dreyer was the general manager at the time, but you'll also see his kids. They actually get a cameo in this one here, and this was, gosh, I want to say around 2005 or 6 or something like that, and it was about 20 years ago. So let's show that as the way to introduce our guest. Man, how are you feeling at this moment?
Great.
Here we are in the 3rd or maybe 4th inning of the first game, and in between the games, certain things are going to happen to you. What are they?
Shaving my head over a bet.
And the bet was?
That during the New York Penn League All-Star game, that one of our players. That's right. Won MVP. I said that George would shave his head. They did. George has to shave his head because I opened my big mouth and made the bet. I'm a good sport, so off it goes.
So this is something to look forward to between innings.
That's right.
And your wife knows about this?
She knows about it.
And her reaction?
She's going to miss it, but at least I got my age and it's going to grow back.
So, George, here you are on the eve of something quite extraordinary in your
We
life.
hit the all-time low in promotional events here at Dietrich Park for me to shave my head.
And this is going to happen soon.
Ever won the MVP award, that our Director of Sales and Marketing, George Sisson, would shave his head on the field after Gabby Sanchez's game-winning two-run single paced the National League All-Stars to victory, earning Gabby MVP honors. Matt and George agreed to shave their heads on the field in between tonight's ball games. At the completion of Game 1, there will be a 30-minute break. Matt and George will both get their heads shaved on the field, and then Game 2 will start after the 30-minute break.
That's all about minor league baseball right there.
I would shave this. You should. I think you should. Huh? I'm not even gonna, I can't even. I'll never forget coming down through and seeing you eyeing me up and go.
So this is the guy that made this all possible.
This is the reason.
The guy that made it possible. How do you feel about this? You know, you're changing his life.
I feel bad because he may not go back. You know, he doesn't have that much up there.
Well, oh, look at this. They're coming in like a parade of women. Look at this. All right, now he's wearing.
We need power. Power. There we go.
No power.
Actually, George, you don't look too bad. Right, you know?
Put in the comb back, George. One thing I noticed in my job was kids entered the middle grade. That was the tough part. They wouldn't get just as social.
Yeah, maybe about 11. Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, let's invite George Sisson to join us here.
They were right. 20 years and it hasn't grown back. There's a lot more to that story that happened. The bet happened during the banquet of the All-Star game. We were in Brooklyn, and Matt started to enjoy the day a little early. And so we're at this banquet, and Juan Marichal is speaking. And Matt's over there. He's distracted. He's just trying to be funny and have a good time. And I'm like, Matt, settle down. Juan Marichal. Who's he? Okay, Matt, we're going home. We're headed home. But, yeah, Gabby Sanchez lives in infamy. I should send a picture to him and tell him, you're right, it never grew back. So.
Did you know that that was actually going to now become a reality, that Matt Dreyer was going to, actually, though he said we were going to do that, that in fact it was going to happen?
I didn't believe Matt would do it. I figured, listen, we had Ben, Matt, and myself in the front office, and I was the old man. I mean, Matt and Ben were both mid-20s, and so it was always the two young guys versus the old guy. So I didn't believe he would do it. I really felt he was going to be like, hey, I said to Bet, I'm not going to do that too. But I think we were sitting there, and John was with us from the Bisons.
Dandies. John Dandies.
John Dandies. Well, he thought it was funny. Well, then in the game, it was like seventh inning still, and it was a terrible offensive game in the All-Star. And when Gabby hits that single, drives him in, Dandies was all about this. He thought this was good. And if you know John, he's got a weird sense of humor. And Mike, I don't know if you noticed that what didn't show up in that clip is I was wearing the Wellenzone yellow sunglasses. Did you see those? Because Wellenzone, who was the GM, let's see, it was Wellenzone, and then it was Edelstein, and then Matt. And I guess the gentleman, Wellenzone, used to always wear these yellow sunglass type things. So they came in that morning in the stadium, and I wore the yellow sunglasses all day. And so you might know about that. But yeah, it was pretty. John Dandies was all about this. He thought that was one of the funniest things. And John's been in baseball a long time, and he just thought that was funny stuff. So
this was between it was a doubleheader. It was between games
against Auburn, who one year beat us every stinking game. We hated Dennis Holmberg. I remember one of my first years, I think Auburn beat us all 17 times, or we played, or 13, whatever it was. And Auburn was running these dollar hot dog nights, so we as a staff all decided to go to Auburn for hot dog night and be out there. And we got there early, and our team just came off the field from BP. And let's see, first manager I was here in 04 was Benny Castile? Was it Benny? Benny Castile was here, right? And Benny was hot. He came hunting us out. And the Auburn front office staff played too legit to quit for 45 straight minutes on replay during our BP. And oh man, they were hot. They thought that was funny. But Dennis had a really good program back then in the day, so yeah.
You know, I identify you with sports. Were you, when you grew up, did mom and dad inculcate the Sissons in the sports world?
My sister was the oldest, and then they had 4 boys, Glenn, myself, Kenny, and Carl. And we all went to Casadega Valley. And when you go to a small rural school, you know, you do what you do. My sister was into music and theatrics and all that kind of band, so she kind of did that. And then the boys were more into sports, and so we did that. The bad part about our family, like, we're competitive people, ridiculously competitive. I mean, if it was going to the gas station, you had to be the first one there with your car to fill up. I mean, we would be Glenn and Carl, the oldest and youngest, versus Kenny and George in the middle. And we'd start our game, whatever it was, kickball, bonk ball, basketball. It didn't matter, croquet. I mean, we lived on top of Damon Hill Road, and the biggest thrill of croquet is when you hit somebody else, you get to send them. And you always had to send them to get the ball out onto Damon Hill so it would roll all the way down Damon Hill Road. Well, that started a fight, because I'm not going to go get that thing. And so then you came in, you had to sit on the back porch, because my mom in the summertime would throw us out at 8 o'clock in the morning, lock the door. If you're thirsty, there's a hose. Figure it out. So it was always a truce. Right, and then we start the game over again, and then, but you couldn't play croquet because one of them was down at the bottom of the hill, so now we're over playing kickball in the backyard until somebody got in a run down at third, and then they threw the ball, and it ended up into the pasture, and I'm not going to go into the pasture to get the, you know, barbed wire fencing and all that kind of stuff. We're going to start a fight, and then you start over again. So, yeah, it was, we did sport, and I got stuck with the worst gene pool of the sports. My brother Glenn was a very good athlete, post-journal this, post-journal that. My brother Kenny, post-journal this, post-journal that. Carl, post-journal. George, I remember one time in high school, I was playing basketball for Coach Carpenter, and Coach, I had a big voice like this. And I was in practice one day, and my brother Glenn, he was in shooting range as soon as he came over half court. Remember, Casadega had a gym about the size of this, right? When you took the ball out of bounds, you only had to put 1 foot out because it was right up tight. And so my brother Glenn had the green light. No, I got to have the green light, right? So I got to play in practice, and I shoot the ball. And Sisson. He says, you want to shoot the ball, you get an offensive rebound. I'm mad now, right? He's going to shut me down. So next shot goes up, I'm pushing people, I'm shoving, I grab a rebound, I shoot it back up, and I probably had to miss it because the next comment was, Sisson, you want to shoot the ball, you get 2 offensive rebounds. And so, anyways, my brothers were very good. So if you can't be a good athlete, then you get into coaching. So that's where we're at. So.
Have you explained that to every coach, that if you're not an athlete?
Yeah, no, I let that all go because at that young age, it was like, it was interesting. In my family, we grew up, the Post-Journal would come, and nobody got the Post-Journal before my mom got it. My mom, she read the Post-Journal. She knew Shane Conlon did this at Frewsburg, and Glenn did that, and the Lincoln Benedict at Silver Creek, he had done that, and right. I mean, she had all the deals down, so really we didn't have to read it because she'd already told us what it was. But anyways, no, it's all good because, you know, I was a has-been that never was. You know, but it's okay. I was a great player in my own mind and time. So,
but you
they didn't appreciate role players back then.
So Casadega Valley, then where?
Well, I ended up having an opportunity. I could have went to Greenville College out in Illinois to play baseball. or I could have went to Roberts Wesleyan to play basketball. And Roberts Wesleyan was not a very good program or whatever. My brother Glenn was there. My sister was there for music. My brother Glenn was there for engineering. So we weren't going to be in the same classes, if you know what I mean. And so I remember the phone rang. It was Coach Schuler from Roberts. He said, "You made up your mind where you're going to go?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go to Roberts." Everybody in my household was like this because they all thought I was going to Greenville to play baseball. I was a little better baseball player than basketball, but I love basketball. So all my family was like looking around going, all right, I guess she's going to Roberts. So I ended up going to Roberts, and then, we went from there.
So you ended up, and you graduated from Roberts Wesleyan, did you get
No, actually I went there because they were going to build a gym and they were going to start a phys ed program. I wanted to be a gym teacher. My role model growing up was Coach Asquith. Art Asquith was my elementary gym teacher at the Gary Elementary School. All right, that's starting to date me already. I know I don't look that old, but I did. I ended up going there. But Coach Asquith was my gym teacher, and I was the king of phys ed. I mean, he'd have a rope that he'd swing around, he had to jump over, scooters, jump rope in, it didn't matter. Phys ed. And as I grew up, I was like thinking to myself, really, I could make a career and go play gym all day and have lunch in the middle of the day and then finish up gym and then maybe coach a sport. That's a job. Is that a job? I get to wear shorts and sneakers? Sign me up, I'm in. So I go to Roberts. They don't have the gym built yet. And so I took sociology. And halfway through the first semester, I really don't care about sociology. Like, oh my God, what am I doing here? So first semester was pretty tough. And really the only reason I'm alive today is because when the grades came out from first semester, I was in Georgia heading to Florida for a basketball trip for Christmas. Because when the 179 got opened by my dad, he couldn't catch me. I was gone. I was gone. And by the time that we were gone for 10 days on the Christmas trip, he kind of settled down, and Coach Schuler kind of settled him down. But we got things fixed, and then the sophomore year, we had a new coach. His name is Dr. Ken Sisson, not related. But my brother Glenn and I were both playing. So it was like one of those things, oh yeah, they brought in the Sisson brothers' dad is coaching them now. That's great for Glenn, but for me, I just moved 3 seats farther down the end. I was left end right tackle. I sat on the left end of the bench guarding the tackle, and guarding the water bottle at the end of the thing. So, but Dr. Ken was good. He knew I wanted to become a coach. He, after my sophomore year, he said, let's build this program and you be my assistant. That showed you the financial level of that program when they're going to bring a 19-year-old in to coach college basketball with you, right? He was taking anybody he could get. I transferred over to Brockport to finish up my physical education degree. So my undergrad was really the 6 best years of my life. I mean, I crammed that sucker in there hard. And so I finished up there. Here's a funny story. I started my coaching career at JCC, and I finished my coaching career at JCC. My very first coaching game was I brought the JV team from Roberts down to play JCC at JCC. And, we big budgeted program, so we brought the van down. We went to my mom and dad's house. They fed us our pregame meal. And we went over to JCC, and I'm really bad with names. And now that I'm old, I'm really, really bad with names. But Pete Broca was the head coach. I think he was only there for maybe 1 or 2 years in between people. So Pete Broca was the head coach. That's great. Going home, post-game meal, I think my father-in-law, Donald and Cutler, made us snacks for our way home. So we were able to make this trip. Otherwise, financially, it would have been a disaster. And we went 5-20, so we didn't have to pay tolls too. So we get home. So now, 4 years as an assistant at Roberts, finished my undergraduate degree. I choose to take a job at Eastern Nazarene College in Boston. I'm 22 years old, and I'm a head college basketball coach. Really, that's my claim to fame, if you want a claim to fame, is I'm the youngest head coach in the NCAA history. I got 2 guys on my team that were older than me. So when you're 22 and you get a head college job, I wasn't taking over Duke, if you know what I mean, okay? We had some work to do. But I looked at my schedule, and we got going. First game was Western New England. So I had to travel all the way across Massachusetts, and I'm getting ready now to scout Western New England. Head coach, Pete Broca. So there he is. There's Pete Broca. My first college game as a head coach is Pete Broca. And then, of course, I get the AD job, and the president said, they hired me as the AD because I was the craziest coach they had down there, and the only way they could get me off the sideline is make me the AD. Maybe I wouldn't yell at the officials so much and stuff. So my last game was at JCC. So I started and finished my coaching career at JCC.
So after Eastern, then where?
Eastern, I went back to Roberts as a coach in waiting. I spent 3 years there at Eastern Nazarene as the head coach. I left and went back. I spent 2 years as Dr. Ken's assistant. He came out of East Stroudsburg. He was at East Stroudsburg, part of the PSAC for many, many years, worked at Temple, and then he came to Roberts. His first wife, whose name is Nancy, my mom's name is Nancy. He had a daughter named Cheryl that was a music major. I had a sister named Cheryl that was a music major. It was weird. He had a son, Kenny. I had a brother, Kenny. Kenny was at the school. His Kenny was at the school. I remember one day I got a call from my brother. He says, I think I got a problem. I said, oh, Kenny. My brother, Kenny, he's a little bit off center, right? And so he comes down, he goes, I got this in my student mailbox. And I said, well, what is it? I opened it up. It was Dr. Ken's paycheck. So they had Kenny Sisson, and Kenny Sisson. They were all getting each other's email. I said, yeah, you better take that down and give it back to him. So, but yeah, it was good. I went there for 2 years, and we built up a really good program, had a fun run to retire him after a lot of years. And then I took over there, and I was the head coach there again for 8 years until 2002. And then, as like any good coach, we wear out our welcome. And there was a couple people there that, you know, I'm like the guy, right? All of us that are in sport, you're either hot or cold. There's no lukewarm in there. People love you or hate you. I'd gotten to the point where I had a lot of people who loved me, but I had the wrong people who hated me. And so I ended up leaving, and it was all good. It was like 17 years that I've accumulated 17 years of college coaching. And so I was unemployed. I was working for lawn care. I was painting, and I was applying for jobs. And I remember going on the NCAA website, putting out and I'm literally writing letters to these people, and I'm like, oh, God, please, I hope they don't call me because that team is terrible. I don't know if I want to coach there again, right? I don't land. And this is how I ended up in minor league baseball, this story here. This is honest to God truth. So I spend a whole year of just doing what I do to make ends meet. I got a wife, 4 kids, a house, and what am I doing now? I get a phone call from my brother, Carl, who was working for the Heritage Group, marketing person. He says, hey, you ever thought about maybe working in minor league baseball? I said, right now I'm thinking about working anywhere, but happen to do another aeration. I'm getting too old to do this. He says, well, they were just up here trying to sell advertising. They said they're looking for somebody. I said, all right, send it to me, I'll apply. So he sends it, I apply, okay? I come down for an interview. Now, Matt, like I told you, Matt's like 24? Ben Burnett's like 22, just out of college. And I'm coming in at, 36, 37 years old? And we interview, and I go home and I tell Carl, there's no chance they're hiring me. I don't fit the mold with all these young people. So phone doesn't ring. So I'm like, yeah, I definitely didn't get it. Then all of a sudden the phone rings. It was like early February. And Matt says, we want to offer you the job. When can you start? I said, it's 2 hours down there. I can be there tomorrow morning. So packed up a couple duffel bags, and I moved in with my mom and dad out in Gary, and I actually worked there for almost a full calendar year. My wife was in Rochester with the 4 kids, and I was living with my mom working minor league baseball, making $1 million. Minus 900, but come to find out, like 4 or 5 months later, well, my first week of work, Matt walks over and hands me all these manila folders. And I've built 2 programs in basketball. I can recruit, right? The gift of gab didn't come short for me. So I'm like, all right, let's go. I got my little spot. I got my phone. I grabbed the first manila folder, and I call, and I have to leave a message. And I worked through about 25 of them. The next day I start in again. I'm not getting anywhere. Like, I'm not. It was like 2.5 weeks, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm not making any sales. How am I going to make this thing work? 18,000 and 3% commission. I'm going to be in serious trouble. So finally, it was like 2.5 weeks. I finally got somebody to say, yeah, we'll take a sponsorship. We'll do this, and that. I hung up the phone. I said, this is great. Matt comes out. Matt goes, man, that's awesome, George. I'm like, awesome. I got one sale in 2.5 weeks. This is going to be a long year, right? He goes, well, I gave you all the folders of everybody who dropped their sponsorship in the last 3 years. So anyways, that's what my file was when I got there. But the reason I got the job, then I found out later, the guy that they offered it to didn't pass the drug test. So they were really in serious trouble. They couldn't wait any longer. So I got it because I was clean. So it was good. I love drug testing. It's awesome. Let's go, drug testing.
So you're the default guy.
Old default guy.
So now you're in baseball. What did you, I mean, you played baseball, but never been administration. What'd you learn about the Jamestown Jammers? And of course, they were owned by the Buffalo Bisons. What'd you learn?
Well, I remember that when I was a boy growing up, they were with the Montreal Expos. And I thought it was the coolest thing. And I remember it now. We only got one game a week on Saturday afternoon, right? This week in baseball. And that was what. So when we went to Dietrich Park as a younger person, they were wearing the Montreal Expo uniform. Remember that? And we were like, whoa, those are the Expos. Ray Shines was playing first base. And, you know, so I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't understand the big thing of minor league baseball. It was just baseball. So I come back, and then, of course, as soon as I'm there, I start learning about the tradition and the history of the Falcons and this, and, you know, looking at all this stuff that they had. And I thought to myself, yeah, this is pretty cool. I'm part of one of the big things that Jamestown has to offer our community. It's pretty good to be part of this operation. But, yeah, it was, you know, I didn't understand the ownership stuff. I just knew I was working for the Jammers. I remember going up to Buffalo. We got summoned by John Dandies to come to Buffalo. He wanted to review what we had been doing and give him an update on what's happening. So here we are. We're at the stadium. John has an office with windows that look down on the field. And I thought to myself, now that's going to be my office someday, you know, right? You evolve. There's nothing better than looking at a baseball field, right, when the grass is all mowed in beautiful patterns. My lawn still gets mowed that way. I got issues, but I take medication for it. But so we're sitting there, and John's, you know, he's listening to us. And it was about 10:30 in the morning. I was pretty nervous. New guy. Matt and Ben had already met John. I had never met John. All of a sudden, the door knocks, and in comes about 6 guys, and they're carrying all this stuff. John's a good-sized guy. John's healthy, all right? And so they come in, and they set this stuff down on his desk, and they take the covers off, and it's like 6 platters of hot dogs. Now I'm thinking to myself, hey, you got to be kidding me. Is it break time and they're bringing hot dogs for the... So we were there for taste testing. I had to take a taste test, and we had to rate the hot dogs and how much we think we... And so I was part of picking the hot dogs for the stadium in Buffalo that summer, and that was pretty cool.
Do you remember which one you selected?
No, I was just eating hot dogs, man. We didn't have free hot dogs in Jamestown. I was just eating hot dogs. It was good. But fortunate enough, John took a liking to me, and it was good.
John did take a liking to you. But during this time period, you also had some interesting players, people who came through Jamestown, and you got to know, as a staffer, you got to know the players better than really the other staffers. That was, whether that was your job or not, you embraced it.
Well, coming from college sport, you build relationships with young men. When I was coaching, that's what you did. When you recruit them, you build relationships. And my job, I was community relations, and I was sales and marketing, and I was, in charge of these types of things with the team at the time. So if I didn't have a good relationship with these guys when it was time to go do a community service project, I was in trouble. I either had to take somebody that had gotten fined, and to work off a fine, they could go do a community service. All right? In single A short season, you take a $50 fine, you're willing to volunteer and keep that money. So, or you develop some kind of relationship with them. But yeah, it was interesting. I remember one year, Logan Morrison, Dustin Cates, and Scott Cousins. They got called up like with 2 weeks left to go in the season. And at this time, we were still using apartments around Jamestown. And I'm like, where am I going to get an apartment for 2 weeks? You know, put them in a hotel room. Now they don't even make enough money to pay for a week's hotel at that time there. So we were looking and looking. Well, let's just go buy air mattresses and we'll shove them in these apartments. And it's like, man, if we do that and get caught, we won't have that apartment next year. And so I went home, and by that time, my wife and I had moved everybody down, and we had a house over on Hanford Avenue on the outside of Jamestown there. And I came home, and I started the sob story. It was good. I was working it, guys. I had it all in I was like, we got this thing, and we've been working it, I don't know how and we had redid this room downstairs in our basement. We had refinished it. And I had a pull-out couch, and I had enough room for other stuff. And I was just, thinking maybe, and she goes, don't even ask me to bring these 3 guys to live here. That was what I got from my wife. And I was like, well, I really wasn't thinking, but, I'm lying. I'm backpedaling like crazy. So the next day, I come home from work. She says, well, where are you going to put the guys? I said, I really don't have. Now I'm just going to bleed it out, right? And she goes, all right, just put them down there, and I'm not cooking for them, I'm not doing anything, but they can stay down there. Oh, that's great. Whew. Got that one down. There's a win for the old boy. So they come in, I bring them over to the house, there's an outside door into the room, hey guys, they were thankful. Good dudes. First night that they dress and play, Morrison, who's 17 years old, right, drafted by them, 17 years old, bangs a home run in the middle of the game. So game's over, I got stuff to do, they shower, they're gone, right? I come plowing into the house, I don't know, 12:30, whatever, 1 o'clock in the morning, and there they all are, eating. And I'm like, what? Well, Gabby hit a home run. I had to make him something. It was something special. Not Gabby, but Logan. I'm like, well, there we go. That lasted a whole 24 hours, and Mama Kim was Mama Kim. Next morning, I'm headed out to the stadium, and they start coming upstairs, and towels around their neck and their boxer shorts, walking to the shower. They were Sisson boys from there on out. So, yeah, it was.
Well, and Logan had a significant career.
Logan had a great career. We ended up having an opportunity to see him play in Greensboro. We had an opportunity to see him play in Florida. We had an opportunity to see him play in Oklahoma City when he was in AA at the time. And every time we were there, it was always lunch after the game or dinner after the game. And Logan was great. Logan actually, when the season got over with, he stayed with us for like an extra 5 or 6 days. And my boys loved him because he would go down to the bus stop, get the boys, jump in the car, and run down to the Mexican restaurant. He loved the Mexican restaurant down by the Lakewood Post Office. I remember that place right there, yeah. And Logan bought them food, and they come home. And Logan was the guy. He was the guy. But Scott Cousins was injured most of that year, and he goes on a road trip, and he says, hey, George, I need you to do me a favor. I bought a car. I said, why'd you buy a car in upstate New York? What are you? I didn't buy an upstate. It's getting trucked in. It's coming in while I'm on the road. Can you get it? And it was one of these Dodge Chargers, like a 17.9 engine. You touch the gas, and it's like eject. So the trucker pulls into the parking lot. I get down there, and he goes, you take this car off the truck. I'm like, are you kidding me? And it was on the top. So, man, I put it in reverse, and I barely touched the gas. I exited the back of that truck at about 40 miles an hour. I got home that night. I called Scott. I said, you're in trouble. You are in trouble. And he came home from that road trip. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. We woke up the next morning, had a note on the dear Mr. and Mrs. Sisson, thank you for everything. I decided to take off and go home because I wasn't going to get back playing. So next time I really see Scott Cousins, he's plowing Buster Posey and changing the whole leagues of the rule. Right? He was the guy that plowed Buster Posey, busted him up at home, right? And now they changed, it's a Scott Cousins rule. And great kid. And Dustin Cates ends up playing a couple years, and now he's a police officer. in Arizona. So, yeah, it's been good.
Well, you also, during that time period, you had a guy come through. His name, at the time, he was known as Mike Stanton, not to be confused with now Giancarlo Stanton.
Yeah.
What did you think of him? He was
I thought to myself, oh my God, we just drafted a middle linebacker. You know, he was incredible. First of all, that was back in the day when they could still sign guys up to like August 15th or something like that. So the draft picks in June, you could run them there. So they draft Dominguez, number 1, Stanton, number 2, Jamerson Smith, number 3, Cishek was 5. Who was the outfielder from Oregon? The left fielder. I can't remember. It happens to us old folk when we do this. But anyways, it was a time, so we got a word saying that those guys got signed. They were going to spend 3 or 4 days in the Golf Roast League, all right, and get down there and get their physical and play. Golf Coast League, we joke about Golf Roast League because they played games at high noon in Florida. That's what they do to rookies. I mean, that is not even nice. Even at your worst aunt, you would never do that to. And then they were going to ship them up to Jamestown. We're like, oh, great. But they shipped them to us when we were in Williamsport. We had to load up a car, drive all the uniforms out to Williamsport for one friggin' game. So we drive all the way to Williamsport, we drop the stuff off, we come home. So now, the next day, we got Jim Riggs is at Cable 8. Remember Cable 8 News was at the time, right? It was on TV, and we had all these people here because it was the first time in years that the Marlins had all 5 draft picks in Jamestown. That was a big deal. And Mike Stanton, that night, Rodriguez was the hitting coach for us. And so he's out there in the middle of the afternoon hitting ground balls to Dominguez at third because Dominguez is going to play third that night. Stanton was in the turtle batting cage in the hitting group. And we're all standing around. And there's different sounds for different people, right? You get second basemen and it's ting, 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 ting. And then all of a sudden Stanton gets up there and it's crack, crack. And it's like he's hitting it with the trunk of the tree, not the branch. And I'm looking out there and going, impressive. And so we're just standing there waiting for batting practice to get over, and they were going to interview these guys. And all of a sudden, Dominguez is down at third base, and he's fixing the dirt in there. Stanton hits a ball, and he hits a line drive. When I tell you, you cannot see this ball leave the bat. He hits a line drive right down the third base line, and he hits Matt Dominguez right here in the sternum. And if you ever seen, like, there's different levels of Western, and the really good levels of Western, when a guy gets shot, it's dramatic as you die. You don't just fall over and die. Dominguez gets hit, and it's like stagger, and he's slowly winking his way to the ground. In the meantime, of course, when you have all 5 draft picks, you got every rover, every person the Marlins could send up there to see these guys play were there. And you hear this, and the light towers were like this, right? And I was standing right at the home dugout on the third base side, so it was like right in front of me. And it was like that, you know how it's like, there's going to be a crash. I don't want to see it. And I'm looking, and I'm like, oh my God, get up, get up. I'd already, as a young coach, I had a player die from a heart attack on my team. So I'm like, no, we're not doing this again. I can promise. So everybody runs out there, and Dominguez gets up, and he walks off, and he heads into the locker room. And so I'm like looking at Jim Riggs, and Jim's like, well, should I stay here, or are we going to get to talk to this guy? So I go in there, and I go down to the training room. James Stone, I think, was our trainer at the time. And I walked down, and Dominguez was sitting there, and you literally could count every stitch. You could read Rawlings. You could read the commissioner's name that's imprinted. I mean, forget a tattoo. He didn't need any needles. That sucker was tattooed right here in his sternum. And he looks up, he goes, Everson was the manager.
Yep,
Remember Everson?
Darren, yeah.
The only guy I knew that wears size 8.5 hat. All right. And he goes, go tell the skipper I'm not sitting out tonight. So I run out. I'm like, yeah, that's our #1 draft pick, tough guy. And so the game comes, And I'm standing at the sideline because I had to be all the on-field shenanigans during the game. I was talking to somebody, I said, you know what's going to happen? The first guy is going to hit like a one-hop shot right down to the third baseman, guarantee it, right? That's how the baseball gods work. And Dominguez he's not going to want any part of that whole thing, right? And we laughed, ha ha ha. That's going. First guy hits a one-hop shot, down there at third base, and Dominguez is like, hey. And of course, we have a group of fans up in Section B. It's like, that's what you just spent $3 million signing for a third base. And of course, I wanted to go up on my microphone and say, this guy just wore a thing in his chest. I wouldn't have gotten in front of that either. You couldn't though, right? But anyways, then Mike Stanton comes up, and they throw him a fastball, it was a ball. They throw him a curve, and he swings at it like he's chasing flies in the living room. He couldn't hit a curveball to save his life. And strike one, strike two, strike three, sit down, you're no good. And everybody's like, that's what you just spent $10 million on, that right there. And I'm like, I just saw this guy hit home runs that were going off the library at JCC. And so, fifth inning, game's already out of reach. Everybody's heading home. They got their fill. And again, I'm down there. I'm like, man, it'd be nice if Stanton just he hits one. And so at Dietrich, remember now, in the old scoreboards in left center field, the new scoreboards in right center field. The old one is wrapped. I believe it was Budweiser at the time, big Budweiser. And that wrap is really loose. And so he hits this line drive. It was out in 0.4 seconds. I mean, this thing was hit. And it hits the scoreboard, which is set back about 7 feet from the home run fence. It hits that scoreboard and comes back into play. We're all going crazy, and Mike starts trotting, and they throw him out at third base. They call him out. And we're like, no, that hit the boy Everson, and he was a mad Norwegian. He was a bad Viking. And he came out, and he had a little conversation. No, it wasn't a conversation. He was basically telling the umpires how this was going to work. And so they ended up calling a home run. Of course, I turned around, and there was really nobody left in the stands because the first two at-bats were horrific. So, yeah, Michael Stanton, the kid that we put them in the hotel. And so our job every day was we go down to the hotel in the morning and pick them up with a jammer van. Remember the great jammer van? And bring them to the hotel. And then after the game at night, we'd be taking them back to the hotel. And it was almost every night because they had no food at the hotel. They had really no way to cook it. They didn't have any of that stuff. And it'd be like, door would open down the office. My desk was right next to the door. Push it open. Mr. Sisson, can you take us to Walmart tonight? Here I am, Michael Stanton, the guy that can buy Walmart now, right? And so that was my little jig, is that they got to the fact that Mr. Sisson would take them to Walmart every night to get food to take back to the hotel for breakfast and dinner. But yeah, Mike Stanton, good kid. You know, one of the things I really liked is I wanted to, when I left coaching and I got into my professional baseball, I really wanted to see what the difference level was from an NAIA. We were pretty good. We were a nationally ranked NAIA program, national tournament. What were these guys like that are now professional baseball players? Were they uniquely different? One of the things that was always comical to me was that they were still 18-year-old boys. You know, they were boys. And they still did stupid stuff and silly stuff. And really, I would say less than 0.5% would be jerky. They were just really good dudes. And they were just young men away from home or away from college where everything was really structured to being on their own. And it was fun. It was good. Taylor Tankersley was one of my favorites. Daniel Barone, he and I always had a great start. Remember my very first year, the draft came, guys are flying in, we got all this detail, and all of a sudden this guy Barone from California couldn't get to Buffalo, so he had to fly into Erie, and I'll go get him. Because at that time I was a single guy. My wife was up in Rochester with the 4 boys doing all the work. I said, well, I'll volunteer. I'll go down and get him. At that time, we had this Ford. What was that Ford car? It had like 230,000 miles on it. But, I mean, you'd stop and put gas in it, and you'd buy 3 cans of oil, right? And then, So I'm heading down to Erie to pick him up, and he walks out, and here's his Dodge Shadow, hatchback Dodge Shadow. He walks out, and there I am. I'm Danny Brown. Yeah, come on, this is us. Throw this stuff in. We headed out. We got up on 86, and my oil light came on. I had to pull over, pop the hood, go add a quart of oil. Danny's thinking to himself, where in the world? Now we're out on 86 in the middle of nowhere, right? French Creek or whatever. And he's thinking to himself, I'm California, and I'm here in a car that needs oil between here and there. So, but Baroni made it. He made it to the bigs. He did. And we saw him along the way and stuff. Yeah, it was good.
Well, you would bring those guys back usually for the hot stove the next year.
Yeah, those hot stoves, crazy.
Yeah.
Remember when Morty and Trader Jack were in town?
Yeah, that was great.
Remember, we were supposed to have it on a Monday. We had a snowstorm come in. Coach Jack McKeon, manager of the World Series winning Marlins, and then Morty was going to be our coach the next year. That was a whole different story. He needed like 20 days to get his 10 years of professional baseball pension. So I think there was a whole big deal. Morty, you go to Jamestown and manage, and then we're going to sign you at the end of the year. We'll get you your days and so forth, right? So, it's Coach McKeon was supposed to fly out of Charlotte at like 6 a.m. in the morning, so he's up at 3 to get to the airport, and he calls me and says, we can't do it. So we end up canceling, and we said, can you get out tomorrow? We'll just bump everything to the next day. And so McKeon comes, and we pick him up the next day, and Morty's already in town at the hotel. We're in the jammer van. We're going to go to lunch out at Ground Round, right? And Applebee's, I guess. Applebee's. We pull up in front of the thing. Coach McKeon, he is a storyteller. He's much funnier than anybody. So he's back there talking. He's got the unlit cigar, right? And Morty comes out of the airport, or out of the hotel, comes up the van, opens the door, and Coach McKeon's in the middle of telling a story. He looks at him and goes, Jesus, Morty, get a haircut. Morty had that stuff, and, they laughed about it and all that kind of stuff. But that night, hot stove is over, 10:30. Coach McKeon comes up to me and goes, I hear there's a casino nearby. And I'm like, yeah, it's about half an hour, 35 minutes down the road. How long is it going to take you to get this place cleaned up? I said, you want to go? So I tell Matt and I said, I'm going to take Morty and Coach McKeon to the casino. He wants to go to the casino. Now, mind you, he's been up since 3 o'clock in the morning to come up here, and he's
old.
He was older. I can't say old because Rissel's sitting right there. Yeah. He's about Rissel's age.
He's younger than Sturwood.
So we go there, and I said, we pulled up, and I said, okay, it's 12:30. What do you think? Maybe 1 o'clock, hour and a half to go do something. And so I'm just sitting there, and I'm beat. I'm like, we just got to get to tomorrow, get these guys back to the airport, and we're done. 1 o'clock, Morty's out there. I'm like, Morty, where's Coach? I don't know. Are you going to go in and get him? Let's go. We got to go. I got to leave Jamestown by 3:30 to get you guys to the Buffalo airport. 2 o'clock comes, no Coach. 2:30, Morty, call him. We got to go. We had to literally get him out of there, drive back to Jamestown, throw the stuff in the van, and he pulled a 24-hour. But he did not like the casino in Salamanca. He says he's coming back to get his money back. So anyways, he made a nice donation.
Well, Cindy will remember that Mike Mordecai lived with us for those 2 years, I think Mike was here.
I remember that I felt so much pressure from the Marlins. Like, here's this big leaguer. Remember, Morty had a single in that famous kid. Remember the kid who
Steve Bartman.
Yeah, Steve Bartman deal. That was the series where it was that wasn't the World Series, but that was the series that Miami came back. Morty, I think it was the 8th inning, pinch hit and made that single to score to get them within striking distance, come back and win that thing. So, here's Morty, this major leaguer, and of course he comes into town and goes, "Where's my car?" Car. Well, you got the Jammer van whenever it's available, and that wasn't. The look on his face was like, you really didn't tell me that answer. I'm going to believe that I didn't hear it, and I'm going to give you a chance. Mike, right? So guess what Morty drove all summer? Every time he was at home, he drove the Sisson minivan. But he had the Sisson minivan. I was without a car the whole time the homestand was going on. But that minivan got him to Chautauqua every morning. He'd come home off the road trip at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was golfing at 6 at Chautauqua. So.
No, he was a delight as a guy. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I did interview him just when he first came, and then, of course, what a great story of the fact that he played as a manager here. So he's a Class A manager in Jamestown, and within 2 days, he's on literally the major league team.
Yeah, got his time.
That's got to be the first in the history of baseball.
Yeah.
Scott and Randy can check that out. Were you here when Jorge Fernandez was here? Pitching? No.
Our favorite pitcher in the Sisson household is Taylor Tankersley.
Taylor, of course, yeah.
Taylor was the #1 draft pick out of Alabama, little lefty. He came in with shaved head. His favorite song, his walkout song was, remember, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy. Little risque. Nobody, people would be like, you can't play that walkout song here in Jamestown. It's not appropriate. And he goes, you play it. I'm #1 draft pick. You play it. Well, he took a real liking to my son Andrew, because that was the year that she was living in Rochester, I was down here, and then the 2 older boys were old enough to play midget football, so Andrew stayed with me. Well, every day Tank would come to the office, get Andrew. Andrew's out in the outfield playing catch with him. Andrew, it was like, so it was near the end of the year. Andrew was staying with us. We're getting ready to play the Yankees that series. And so it was a rainy morning, cloudy, Jesus Field, whatever. Andrew comes into the office and tells Ben and Matt that he's got a loose tooth. And so we're like, hey, Andrew. And Tankersley was pitching that night. That was going to be his last start as a jammer. And he told Matt and Ben that he wants to be Tank's Coca-Cola kid. Remember we had the T-shirts and the kids ran out with the starters and the whole 9 yards? And then so Ben and Matt started in, well, if you want to be Tank's Coca-Cola kid, you got to let us pull your tooth out. So they got this string and they tied it on Matt's door. And then Andrew got scared. And then they're sitting there. I was like, well, we're going to shave your head. You want to be like your little Tank? Okay. So then I went home and we got clippers and we went underneath the where you guys have the gift shop now. We pulled the thing up and he sat down and turned the clippers on. He jumped up and ran. He goes, no, pull my tooth. I don't want a bald head. We went back and forth. And then he's a negotiator. He goes, okay, now look, you pull my tooth. I want the T-shirt. I want a game hat. He was negotiating. Of course, Ben and Matt, they think this is funny, so they're egging it on. Then he decided that string to the door didn't look good. So he went back out and he sat down and he said, I'll shave my head, just let Dad do it. And I'm like, he's 6, 7 years old at the time. And Andrew had to round his little head and little round body. And so I took it and I start right down the middle. Too late now. No turning back. So we're shaving him. And around the corner come the Staten Island Yankees. First guy in line. You won't know who this guy was, but he's a pitcher for the Yankees, Tommy John. Yeah. Looks in. Oh, must be shave the kid's head at the ballpark night tonight. And so, anyway, so we buzzed him and then we shaved him, and he was bald as a cue ball. Taylor Tankersley was bald. And so then we told him, you can't see Taylor all day. You cannot go see him. So we hit him. He was in Greg's office where he does the video. And we hit him in there. And just when it was time to do the starting lineup, we snuck him around. Taylor was out in the bullpen, right? He comes in. So they get down to the end, and starting pitcher tonight is Taylor Tankersley. And he's looking around. There's no kid. And then he said, and his Coca-Cola kid is Andrew the Tank Sisson. And Andrew comes around the corner. He's got his baseball hat pulled down. Matt and John pulled that thing down hard. And he ran out with his shirt. And they stood. And I was out at second base. I thought, we'll get a picture of this. I had this little dinky Instamatic, whatever, camera. And Please rise for the playing of the national anthem. And everybody stands up, and Tank turns around and lays his glove down. Andrew puts his glove down, and Tank takes his hat off, and Andrew takes his hat off. And everybody in the crowd sees that he's bald now. And everybody just breaks out laughing, and Tankersley looks around, and he looks down, and he sees Andrew's bald head, and he rubs it, and they both are grinning from ear to ear like brother and brother, you know, and so that was a big deal that he and Tank.
It was an iconic picture of that.
Yeah, I thought we entered that actually at the winter baseball meetings as a program cover of the year, and it was a perfect. To me, it was one of the best ones. Not because he was my son, but it was it made a good story. Tommy John, what is it? Shave a kid's head at the ballpark tonight. He just kept right on walking. So
Tommy John, small name. So. Obviously, we can't go all evening like this.
There's so many good stories. There's funny stuff. There's sad stuff. I'm just not as. My wife said, "Don't just do anything embarrassing tonight, okay?" And then Jim.
How's he doing, Kim?
Jim said, "I'm not coming because usually he's the butt end of a lot of my jokes," and he said, "I'm not getting called out for this." So.
It's a good thing you're not mentioning Jim Rissell at all.
Yeah, I didn't mention Jim at all.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah. So don't do it. Don't do it tonight. Whatever you do. So just to conclude, I mean, to draw closure, I don't think we can ever conclude, but just to kind of draw, you were the Jamestown team for really till 2009. And then within the same operation, the Bisons own a team in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And they asked you to do what?
Well, they had built a brand new stadium in Springdale, Arkansas, in northwest Arkansas, and they had a lineup of a lot of young people. Again, was their front office. I don't think anybody was over the age of 28. Eric Edelstein, I think, he was the GM, and I think he was the oldest one on staff there. And they had a groundskeeper, Monty, was the groundskeeper and a stadium ops guy. And they were second year in the stadium, and it just got to be, the stadium was owned by the city of Springdale. We were the number one primary lease. And so we had to have this relationship with the community to continue growing, and you build a $300 million stadium, you think it would be absolutely perfectly right. I remember thinking to myself when John called and said, "Would you move out to Arkansas? We want you stadium operations director." And I'm thinking, brand new stadium, what a cake job this is gonna be. Oh my God, it kicked my tail. But anyways, we went out there, and I was a stadium ops guy. My first year out there, my groundskeeper goes in for knee surgery, gets MRSA, almost dies. So now I'm the groundskeeper. Come on, please. Are you kidding me? And I'm a stadium ops guy. It works out. But it was a great learning experience. Like every day was new. I almost burned the stadium down one off season. I got a phone call like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I picked it up. He said, "Is this George Sisson?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "This is the fire chief of Springdale Fire Department. Your stadium's on fire." And in one foul swoop, I went from flat in my bed. I hit in the midair of leaving, I was able to get a pair of shorts on. And I grabbed a T-shirt, and I drove to the stadium barefoot, no shirt, just a pair of shorts, thinking I'm going to drive in and see a $300 million baseball stadium on fire. And it was, I'm in charge of this thing. Are you kidding me? So I ended up going in there. Well, it was maybe early November, and we were cleaning the stadium. And when you clean the stadium, you need some stuff. Like, you can't go in there with little stuff. After baseball season, you need heavy-duty bleach. Well, I had Mr. Green, I had bleach, and I had some other thing, right? We're cleaning lockers, and we're cleaning this, and we're cleaning everything. At the end of the day, I put the rags on a Walmart white plastic table that they had in their kitchen area. It started on fire. Like a chemical reaction started that thing on fire. And thank God for all the stuff that they force you to have in buildings. You know, the carpet doesn't burn, the paint doesn't burn, but it collected a lot of smoke. It was quite. Thank God I was in the visiting clubhouse, because it stunk for months. But yeah, it's good. It was a really big time learning experience for me to see something at that level and be a part of that operation.
Well, your son was kind enough to send me a YouTube piece, which will probably drop in, which is there about tarp eats man or something like that. But could you talk about that?
Well, there's two incidents. We made ESPN my very first game. Eric Edelstein was a big-time dog lover, and he had made a deal in the offseason with the SPCA that the SPCA was going to bring a dog to every home game, and somebody was going to have an opportunity to adopt a dog and so forth. So the very first game is a stadium operations guy, first home game. We got all this stuff going on, and in the second inning, on top of the second inning, this dog gets taken out, and they're on a leash from the SPCA and the whole 9 yards. It's beautiful, right? Great. Nice, it's nice. I don't like dogs. They poop, all right? So, whatever. Next thing you know, I'm downstairs, and I'm getting ready to start firing the lights and doing all the stuff that we have to do at a certain time every night, and I get this call on the radio and says, the dog's loose. And I look up to the in-house TV, and this dog is running like mad all over the outfield. And they're like, George, we got to go catch a dog. George is not an intern. George is the director. I am not running out there to chase a dog around the outfield. There's too many cameras. So finally I'm like, game day staff, get on that field and get that dog. As they head out there, the dog stops and squats a poop right in the middle of the outfield. Now they think the grounds guys are going to go out and clean that up. Oh, no, we're not. There's a shovel in the dugout. You take that out. That got sent to ESPN, so we were on ESPN that night with a dog. So now it's July 3rd. I don't think it's my last year. I think it's my middle year there. I was there 3 years. July 3rd, we're going to have a crowd. This place, we seated 7,000, maybe almost 8,000, plus we had the grass berms and eating areas, and it was going to be a big 7,000, 8,000 person night there. And out of the blue, like when it rains in Arkansas, it rains. Like, wow, it's no sprinkling here. Well, we're out there and the game's going, and we just got done with batting practice. And we're starting to get some of the equipment out to haul everything off. And all of a sudden, the radio guy, his job was to kind of always keep an eye on if something was going on. Over the loudspeaker comes, guys, get ready, something's coming really quick. Like, you can't do that when you got a full-size tarp. We knew it was going to start raining, so we started out, and we got the tarp, and it started raining, and then right over center field, right down on the field, the wind catches our tarp. And it just takes off, and we got 30 people, 40 people, all around the tarp. I'm going to tell you right now, 180 by 180 tarp, 40, 50, 60, it could have been 100 people. You have no shot. This thing. So it goes up, and we're all hanging on, and we're getting dragged along, and we're, hang on, and we're yelling at everybody to hang on to the tarp. Don't let go. You do not let go of that tarp, right? So it fluck. And it gets back to the end where we had pushed the turtle back against our screen, and it took this turtle and flipped it and put it up on on the backstop screen. And I'm looking there going, oh, we just ruined a $10,000 screen. And next thing, so now we're like, just get on the ground and lay on the tarp. And now it had turned from rain to hail. And we're out there, and we're laying there, and I must have had, my ears must have been straight out like this, because they were just pouting. It was like, God, that hurts. And I'm between second and the pitcher's mound, and I'm on the corner of the tarp. And all of a sudden, another gust comes, and it picks us up, and I'm hanging on to it, and this tarp is pulling me on my stomach, and I'm going, and I'm like, right, don't let go of that tarp. Whatever you do, don't let. And as I went up the pitcher's mound, I let go of the tarp, and this thing goes up, and it flips over the wire. Now I just ruined a $4,000 tarp, because it was a mess. And in about 5 minutes, it was over. We had stuff everywhere. Turtle was everywhere. L screens were everywhere. I had 25 luxury suites up top, and every one of them was flooded. The wind and the rain came so hard and so fast. But by the time we got the tarp off the screen and we tried to get it back pulled down, so much water comes down in those rainstorms. That takes on a lot of gallons of water real quick. So we literally pulled as far as we could. We didn't get second base. We were from bag to bag, but the arc was still exposed. And we had to lay out there for 40, 45 minutes just laying on the tarp, head to toe, head to toe, head to toe, just wearing it. And it was cold and miserable. So, yeah, that got sent away for the man-eating tarp. We're famous for the man-eating tarp on ESPN and YouTube.
Yes, and thanks to your son, Andrew.
Oh, yeah.
Nice shout out, Andrew. That'll be shown at this very moment. It'll be dropped in.
I'm sure you got sold out for nothing, too. They don't mind that. That's part of the Sisson family right there. We finally got everything put away, and then we had to figure out how to get the game going. And I've got water. We were still going to play because you couldn't cancel it. And people were coming up to their suites, and you were walking across the suites, and it was splash, splash in the carpet. But we made the game work, and it's just another experience. So, but yeah, it's interesting. Lots of funny, stupid, crazy stuff that you would never think, oh, there's no way that happens. Oh, yeah, it does. If it can, it will.
So we could go on, and we might do this again, because I just feel like we're revving up, but the time is drawing nigh. And you talked about tarps, and we talked, obviously, it leads into our season, the Tarp Skunk season forthcoming. But most importantly, since virtually every other Sisson family will be watching this, either they're watching it now or will watch it, is there a Sisson legacy in all of this? I mean, you have done a lot. I mean, a lot.
I'm blessed to be part of a really good family. You know, we were all able to do what we do. We're still very close. A lot of people don't get the fact that when we have a Christmas time together and we get 31 people in one house for 6 days, that can last even nowadays, and we do. So we're a pretty tight-knit family. Oh, we get after each other, something lovely though. I mean, sarcasm's at a whole new level. My wife was this polite young lady when I started dating her in high school, and there was times that she wasn't sure she was going to fit in with this crew. But it's a family that we play hard and we love hard and we support hard, and really blessed to be part of that whole thing. And you know, for me, it goes back to Coach Asquith. I've had a whole career of being, like, this is the most dressed up I've been in probably 2 years. Well, wait a minute. I have an award last spring at our awards banquet, so yeah, it's still my notes. And here's one of the things I learned in baseball is I spelled the name out phonetically, so I didn't mispronounce the names. But yeah, I get to go to work every day in a gym or a baseball stadium, and it's been with all the things that make me up with, you know, learning disabilities and dyslexia and ADHD and all that kind of stuff. This is my world, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. You know, my boys have grown up either in a gym or at a ballpark, and just always blessed. You know, we got funny stories, like when Andrew was in the clubhouse one night playing Nintendo against Salvador Perez. You know, down there, the catchers at Northwest Arkansas got 2 lockers because they had all their crap. Salvi only had 1 set of gear, but he had his big TV and his PlayStation, and Salvi like playing FIFA soccer. And Andrew one night Andrew spent a lot of days with me at the stadium in the summertime, and he and Salvi had a little thing going. So one night, Andrew challenged him to a FIFA game, and they're supposed to be on the field at a certain time. You got to be out of the locker room and on the field going. And nobody was on the field. Polberg's the manager. He comes in the locker room and says, "What the hell is going on here? Get outside. Let's go." "Coach, wait a minute. Little sis is playing FIFA. He's going to get ready to beat him." And they said, "No way." So Andrew ends up winning the game. Guys are all cheering and yelling and screaming in the locker room. Polberg, "Get outside, let's go." So yeah, That was pretty good. Yeah, he's a big man. Salvi's a big man. Knew no English. I nicknamed him WTP, warning track power, because he used to fly out on the warning track all the time. Well, then they brought in some rovers. In 3 games, he hit like 4 home runs. I was going downstairs one night. He goes, I go down the hallway, and I'm like, I might have to change your nickname. No more WTP for you. And he starts laughing. He goes, yeah. He goes, Trier, baby, Trier. And I'm like, you didn't hit 3 home runs. No, Trier. I'm like, what are you talking about? Omaha. And he was telling me he was getting promoted to AAA. Omaha didn't sound like Peyton Manning, but it was Omaha he was trying to share with me. And he was all excited. So I'm thinking, crap, he's leaving in a couple hours. I got to go. And so I ran into the storeroom and got some stuff, and he signed it all for me. And so I have a bunch of stuff. Don't come to my office. You won't be able to find it. But I got some stuff up there that's pretty fun. So.
Well, Salvador Perez will probably someday be in the Hall of Fame. So
he was when you see some of these guys, Mike Trout played, 17 games in our stadium when he was with his Little Rock, Arkansas team, watching these guys. Another funny story I had. Remember the manager of the Mississippi Braves, the guy that got ejected out of the game, and he threw an absolute hissy fit. He covered home plate, and then he went out to first base, and he threw first base into the dugout, and he was... Anybody that would talk, remember that guy?
I do.
And then he was walking to second base, and out of the blue, he looked towards home. He dropped down in the army, crawled to the back of the mound, picked up the rosin bag, put it in his teeth like he was pulling a hand grenade, and he did a hook shot. And honest to God, he threw that from behind the pitcher's mound to the umpire, and it landed right there. Poof, like this. So one day, Frank, the guy that works in promotions, says, "Hey, George, you remember this guy?" And he's showing me the video. And it's funny every time you watch it. It's funny. He goes, "He's the hitting coach for the team coming in." I said, "Oh, you're kidding me." I said, so I went downstairs, and my creativity must have been good. I must have been testing the ice cream that day. And that's one thing nice about being a stadium ops guy. You got to go into the concession stand and make sure everything's operational. 2 o'clock every day, the Edie's ice cream machine was tested. It was always good. So I went downstairs, Danny Helmer, who's now the clubhouse guy for the Royals. He was our clubby. I said, "Danny," I said, "I need you to make me a double layer, brand new sanitary rosin bag for me, size of about a baseball." And he goes, "Well, just do it. I just need to." About 20 minutes later, he comes back, gets me. I go down. We had these indoor batting cages, thank God, because it was so hot when we were down there, right, hon? I mean, it was like the 3 hottest summers in Arkansas's history. So I go down to the batting cages. I said, "Hey, coach," come over. I said, "Hey, I'm going to be honest with you. Funniest ejection I've ever seen, and I've been ejected a few times in my life." And I said, "Would you sign something for me?" And I pulled out the rosin bag, and he looked at it. He goes, "That's funny. I'm going to sign it, and we're never going to talk about it again." Oh, dear. Yeah, he was a good character, though. Fun. So.
Well, you're a good character, and it is so thrilling for us to finally get a chance to have you sit down to share just a modicum of the stories that you have.
I'm just thankful you didn't bring out the picture of the 2 Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. I was kind of sweating that today. Remember that hot stove banquet? I will tell you, though, it was the top seller of the night. I don't think it was because of me. So.
Well, this has been fabulous.
Thanks for having me. A lot of pressure when you're going to the storyteller. Here's the storyteller, but it's fun. I'm a basketball coach. My life, but the 10 years in minor league baseball were fun, unique, and I got lifelong friends. I still go out to Iowa for the National Wrestling, and I spend a day with Brian Polberg, and my son graduated from a school out there, and Polberg was our manager out there. And it was when I left baseball and came back into coaching, I took a lot of stuff from what I watched and observed and looked at from the baseball perspective when I came back to coaching basketball. But it was fun, and to come and have a round table, I'd be a lot funnier if Rissell was up here, because I love making fun of Jim all the time. If I wasn't funny, it's Jim's fault, okay? If I was funny a little bit, then I'll take the credit.
George Sisson, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.